My father had spent a small fortune, $200,000, to secure a breathtaking wedding venue for my fiancée and me, but she had a different plan for it. As I stood admiring my reflection, the sharp tailoring of my wedding suit feeling just right, Clara's voice cut through the quiet satisfaction of the moment. "Leo is getting married," she announced, her tone casual. "He absolutely loves that hotel your dad booked for us." Without giving it much thought, I replied, "That's great. I can speak with the manager and see if I can get him a good rate." I assumed that was the end of it, a simple favor for her brother. Clara, however, remained silent for a long moment, a stillness that made me turn from the mirror. When she spoke again, her voice had a new, insistent edge. "We're his family, Alex. We need to make it a grand affair for him. It's not like you'll even miss the money. We should just let him have our venue." I stared at her, trying to process the sheer audacity of the suggestion. Had I heard her correctly? Seeing the confusion on my face, she pressed on, her voice softening into a tone of gentle persuasion. "Leo has had such a difficult life, losing his parents when he was so young. Now that he's finally found someone and is getting married, we, as his family, should do everything we can to support him." I reminded her, as calmly as I could, that date was specifically chosen by my father for a reason. It has significance. If we give it up, we'll have to find a completely new date and rearrange everything. I tried to offer a compromise. "If your brother uses the same hotel, I am more than happy to talk to the manager and secure him a substantial discount." But Clara was not pleased with my offer. "We haven't sent out our invitations yet," she argued, "so pushing our wedding back by a few weeks is no big deal. Leo's future in-laws are very important people in their community. We can't have them looking down on him. His wedding needs to be a sophisticated, classy event." A humorless laugh escaped my lips. I couldn't help it. "He's your brother, Clara, not mine. Why on earth should I give up my wedding venue for his benefit?" She didn't see it that way. "Once we are married, he will be your brother too," she stated, as if it were an undeniable fact. "It's your responsibility to ensure he has a beautiful wedding." I turned back to the mirror, looking at the man in the bespoke suit that had been flown in from overseas. I looked ready to be a groom, but suddenly the desire to get married had vanished completely. Clara continued her campaign, her voice a relentless buzz in my ear. "Alex, your dad is incredibly wealthy. Spending another $200,000 on a new venue is nothing to him. Leo's situation is different. He doesn't have anyone to rely on. And we should also give him a $50,000 wedding gift, just so his new family respects him." Leo was Clara's cousin, technically, adopted by her aunt and uncle, who tragically died in a car crash when he was a boy. Her family then raised him. I had met him only once. He seemed like a frail, quiet person. I had no strong feelings about him either way, but I knew Clara cared for him deeply, constantly worrying that he would be taken advantage of. I hadn't minded her devotion before, assuming it wouldn't be my concern after we were married. Now, however, her sense of entitlement on his behalf was starting to grate on me. I ignored her and walked towards the dressing room to change back into my street clothes. Clara followed, her nagging voice trailing behind me. "Alex, don't be so stubborn. We can have our wedding any time we want. Leo only gets this one special day." I stopped and gave her one last cold look. "Your brother's life has absolutely nothing to do with me. I don't owe him a thing, and you are certainly not going to use my money to buy favors for him." After I spoke, I intended to leave. The boutique staff were all aware of who I was, and, with professional discretion, said nothing. But the looks they gave Clara were full of pity and a hint of scorn. She couldn't stand the silent judgment. Feeling slighted by my firm refusal, she finally snapped. "Alex, if you're going to be this way about it, Then our wedding doesn't need to happen at all. I raised an eyebrow and turned back to face her. Is that supposed to be a threat? I began to wonder if my generosity and easygoing nature with her had given her the false impression that she held some kind of power over me. She stood with a stern expression, a look of long suppressed resentment finally breaking through. Alex, you really need to work on that spoiled attitude of yours. Who else besides me would ever put up with it? I scoffed. So, you've just been tolerating me all this time? She didn't respond, but her silence was an answer in itself. Our entire relationship had been a matter of convenience. The board members at my company were constantly trying to set me up with their daughters and nieces to gain influence. Since I knew I would have to marry eventually, I figured I might as well choose someone I could manage. Clara, a former college classmate with a simple background and parents who were ordinary workers, seemed like the perfect candidate. She wasn't entangled in corporate politics. She was attractive, educated, and most importantly, she seemed compliant. After dating for a few months, I decided she would be a suitable wife. Love was a concept I didn't particularly believe in. I just needed a partner to present to the world. Whenever work kept me too busy to see her, I'd have my assistant send lavish gifts to appease her. Clara mistook this for deep affection, and I never bothered to correct her. But now, with the wedding so close, she had revealed this demanding, outrageous side of herself. She looked so confident, so certain that I would back down and beg her to reconsider. I found it almost amusing. I looked her up and down, making a cool assessment. Honestly, apart from being reasonably good-looking and, until now, obedient, she had no other remarkable qualities. And now, she wasn't even obedient anymore. There were plenty of women in the world. If one proves to be unsatisfactory, you simply find a replacement. I let out a small chuckle. All right, I said calmly. No wedding, then. Clara's triumphant smile froze on her face. Seeing no hint of compromise in my eyes, she stubbornly declared, Alex, you'll regret this. I gave her a dismissive glance, already considering her a waste of my time. Who do you think you are? I said, before turning and walking out of the boutique. In the car, I told my driver to leave immediately, without waiting for Clara. I then took out my phone and made 2 calls. The first was to the branch manager of the division where Clara worked, instructing him to reinstate her original salary, effective immediately, with no more special treatment. The second was to the hotel, canceling the venue booking and requesting a full refund of the deposit. As I sat in the back of the car, watching the city lights blur past the window, I thought to myself, if Clara is so desperate to be a hero for her brother, she can pay for it herself. After all, I'm just a spoiled rich kid who does whatever he wants. The next day at the office, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. I answered it to Clara's indignant voice. Alex, you are so cruel. You deleted my number and even blocked me. Unless you come and apologize to me in person, I won't forgive you or marry you. Before she could continue her tirade, I hung up. I had deleted and blocked every point of contact I had for her the previous day. She must have borrowed someone's phone to call me. I blocked that number as well and instructed my assistant to no longer entertain any calls or visits from Clara. My assistant, impeccably discreet as always, never asks questions. She simply nodded, jotted down my instructions, and then asked, Mr. Anderson, would you also like me to sort out the records of the gifts you gave to Miss Evans? Her timely reminder made me pause. Since the wedding was officially off, it was only logical that I should get back everything I had given her in anticipation of our marriage. This included cash transfers and valuable gifts. The custom necklace, the luxury watch, and the designer outfits she wore could all be converted back to their monetary value. I am not running a charity, and she shouldn't think for a second that she could take advantage of me and walk away with a small fortune. After giving my assistant those instructions, I returned to my work. Clara, however, didn't give up. Believing I was just throwing a childish tantrum, she found another phone and sent me a series of text messages. "I've already spoken with Leo. If you give him the venue, I will forgive you," one read. Another said, "You are far too stubborn. If you want to marry me, you'll need to change that rich kid attitude. My patience has its limits, you know." I was speechless, and for a moment I began to question my own judgment. How had I failed to see that Clara was so utterly basic and delusional? I deleted the texts without a reply. It was not too late to learn from my mistakes and steer clear of women like her. The day that was supposed to have been our wedding arrived. I had cleared my schedule for it, so I found myself with an unexpectedly free day. With nothing better to do, I decided out of morbid curiosity to see what kind of wedding Clara had managed to pull together for her brother. I booked a private room at the same hotel for lunch and invited my secretarial team to join me. When I arrived, the hotel lobby was in a state of chaos. A large crowd was gathered near the entrance to the main ballroom, their voices a mixture of confusion and irritation. "What kind of a joke is this?" one guest complained loudly. "They invite us to a wedding but won't even let us inside." Another chimed in. "Exactly! They talk about a grand wedding today, but the venue isn't even secured. It's utterly embarrassing." Someone else muttered, "I thought that girl, what's her name, had hit the jackpot marrying into a wealthy family, but it seems they can't even afford to rent a proper hall." Leo stood amidst the crowd in his suit, his face pale and clammy. The bride's expression was not much better. She looked mortified. They were trapped at the doorway, forced to listen to the whispers and complaints of their guests. What should have been the happiest day of their lives had devolved into a public humiliation. The bride's mother stood beside Leo, her face a mask of disdain. "We told you we would pay for the venue," she scolded him, keeping her voice low but sharp. "But your family insisted you had it covered. Look at this, such a disgrace." She made no move to offer payment herself, merely shooting Leo disapproving glances every few seconds. Leo hung his head, not daring to speak, clearly under immense pressure from his new in-laws. It was suddenly very clear why Clara had been so desperate for me to give up my booking for him. The hotel manager, seeing me arrive, hurried over. "Mr. Anderson, I am so sorry," he said, gesturing towards the chaos. "There's been a little mix-up. We will have it sorted out immediately." I was in a surprisingly good mood. "No worries," I reassured him. "It takes all sorts to make a world. Just make sure none of these people try to take advantage of the situation." He thanked me profusely. "Thank you for your understanding, sir. We will resolve this quickly so your meal is not affected." I nodded, and he seemed visibly relieved. Just then, the bride's parents spotted me. Their eyes lit up, and they immediately made their way over. The bride's mother, a well-dressed woman in her 50s with a confident smile and a calculated glint in her eyes, extended a hand towards me. "Mr. Anderson, hello? You're here for our daughter and Leo's wedding, I presume? It's such an honor. Soon we'll practically be in-laws." I had no memory of this woman, but my assistant discreetly reminded me that her company had been trying to secure a partnership with ours for months. Their products had never met our standards, but they had been persistent. I guessed this was their new strategy, trying to get to me through Leo. I did not take her outstretched hand. My assistant stepped smoothly in front of me. "My apologies, ma'am. Mr. Anderson is here for a departmental dinner, not to attend a wedding." The mother's hand hovered awkwardly in the air for a moment before she withdrew it, forcing a smile. "Even so, since Leo is your future brother-in-law, shouldn't we at least offer you a toast? You should honor him with a drink." I gave Leo, who was standing silently nearby, a cold glance. "Clara and I are no longer together," I stated flatly, "and I have no connection whatsoever to Leo." The mother's smile froze on her face. I walked past them without another glance. A few steps ahead, I overheard Clara arguing with the hotel staff. "We booked this venue months ago. Why won't you let us in?" With a practiced, professional smile, a staff member patiently explained, "Ma'am, Mr. Anderson booked this venue, but he canceled the reservation last month. Without a valid booking, you cannot use this space." Clara was stunned. She clearly never believed I would actually go through with canceling it. Now she was stuck. Her face fell, and though she opened her mouth to speak, no words came out. Her silence was taken as an admission of defeat. Among the guests were some of Clara's own relatives. They had always believed she was a success story, pretty, smart, and dating a rich, handsome man like me. Now, the truth was revealed. She was just a woman who relied on me for everything, even something as basic as booking a wedding venue. The relatives, with surprising speed, began crafting new narratives, branding her as a social climber with no merit of her own. Clara heard their whispers, and a dark look crossed her face. She tried to act tough, turning to me and saying, "No one can stand your spoiled attitude. I've been wanting to break up with you for a long time." I sneered. "Since you're so capable, why don't you cover the cost of the venue today? Show everyone that you're not just living off someone else." The staff member promptly handed the bill to Clara. Everyone present turned to look at her, waiting to see what she would do. Clara was trapped. Saving face meant everything to her, so she reluctantly took the bill. A moment later, she looked up at the manager in disbelief. "What is this? Why is it $250,000? I thought it was supposed to be $200,000. She shot me a look of pure disgust. "Alex, you really know how to play dirty." The manager stepped in to explain. "Mr. Anderson's father is a VIP client of our hotel, which entitled him to a 20% discount. As you are not a VIP client, you are required to pay the full regular price." Clara was speechless. She was in an impossible situation and couldn't possibly produce that much money on the spot. But not paying would be a profound embarrassment in front of all her relatives, proving my point completely. I feigned concern. "Need me to step in and see if I can get you a discount?" I asked. "Save your fake kindness," she snapped. Clara's face turned several shades of red and white as she scrambled to borrow money over the phone. She barely managed to gather the funds, but by then, half the day was gone, and many of the guests had grown impatient and left. The wedding finally began in the late afternoon, but everyone was hungry and indifferent to the couple on the stage. The ceremony was rushed and ended quickly. Despite managing to get through the day, Clara was still mocked for having to desperately cobble things together at the last minute. She had spent a fortune but gained no respect. Instead, she had become a cautionary tale. The bride's family, the Lynns, had thought they could leverage Clara and Leo's relationship to connect with me. But now that Clara had publicly severed ties with me, their dissatisfaction with Leo grew, and that displeasure was extended to Clara as well. People like Clara, when lifted to a height they haven't earned, often lose sight of where they truly stand. It was time for her to face reality. Watching the train wreck of a wedding was surprisingly satisfying. After our lunch, I even gave my team the rest of the day off. Returning to the office, my assistant had already compiled a detailed list of all the gifts and cash transfers I had made to Clara. I was very pleased with her efficiency. I skimmed the document and asked her to send it to Clara immediately. There was no need to be soft-hearted with people who no longer mattered. In the weeks after breaking up with Clara, I closed several major deals, solidifying my position within the company. The old-timers on the board who had once tried to manipulate me no longer dared to interfere. It felt as if Clara had been holding me back, a strange drag on my career and fortune. One morning, I had a meeting with a potential partner. Just as my car was exiting the underground garage, a figure dashed out directly in front of us. My driver, thankfully, has excellent reflexes and slammed on the brakes, stopping just in time to avoid a collision. The sudden stop sent my head lurching forward, nearly hitting the seat in front of me. Looking up, I saw Clara, her face contorted with rage. "Alex! How can you be so vicious?" My first thought was, what is this woman doing here at this hour, causing a scene? Before I could say anything, my bodyguards were out of the car, promptly restraining her to prevent her from doing anything rash. Clara looked completely worn out. Her eyes were bloodshot, her hair was a mess, and her clothes were buttoned incorrectly. It was clear she had not been doing well. I rolled down the window and frowned. "Why are you acting like a lunatic? This entire area is covered by security cameras. This behavior could be considered an attempt at insurance fraud. Don't even think about trying to scam me." Clara glared at me, her chest heaving as if I had committed some unforgivable crime. "Alex, I always thought you were just pampered and spoiled, but I never expected you to actively sabotage me behind my back. You had the company cut my salary." I let out a cold laugh. "Wake up, Clara. With your actual skill set, do you honestly believe you deserve a salary of $20,000 a month? Let me be perfectly clear. When you were my fiancée, I arranged for an extra $15,000 to be transferred to you monthly from my personal account. Now that we are no longer together, that money has naturally stopped." Clara was taken aback. I continued, "And since there is no wedding, you need to reimburse me for the value of the gifts I gave you. My assistant sent you a detailed list. You always claim to be a woman of principle, so I assume you won't try to dodge this debt, right?" Her pretense of being a sweet, gentle woman finally shattered. "Those were gifts from you. Why should I have to return them?" I clicked my tongue. "Are you attempting to default? They were gifts given with the explicit understanding of a future marriage. Since that marriage is not happening, you are obligated to return their value. You don't want me to have to take this to court, do you?" Not many people knew about the private financial support I had provided Clara. I never saw the need to broadcast my generosity like other men, who made a grand spectacle of giving gifts. In retrospect, perhaps they were the smart ones. They made their contributions public, stood on the moral high ground, and when things went south, they disappeared from the narrative, leaving the women to look like gold diggers. Listening to my words, the bodyguards and my driver looked at Clara with open disdain. The respectable woman they once knew turned out to be someone living entirely off another person's wealth. "Exactly," one of them muttered to the other. "I heard a while back she wanted him to pay for her brother's wedding venue. When he refused, she tried to use their own wedding as leverage. She clearly didn't know who she was dealing with. He didn't hesitate to just dump her. Serves her right. She tried to gain everything and ended up losing it all." Clara's face looked as though she'd swallowed something foul. Her legs seemed to give way, and she stumbled backward. As the car pulled away, I offered her one last piece of kind advice. "Don't forget to pay me back." Life was going quite well for me, but not so much for Clara. The branch manager later mentioned that Clara had considered quitting, but she was unable to find another job that paid as well. He had been trying to gauge my stance, to see if there was any chance of a reconciliation. I was blunt in my response. Given the green light, the manager, no longer having to hold back, began piling on Clara's workload. She was completely worn out every day, but she didn't dare quit. She had borrowed a significant amount of money to pay for Leo's disastrous wedding, and now, with her salary cut by more than half, she was also saddled with the debt she owed me. She gritted her teeth and persisted, but it was clear she was on the verge of collapsing. The company officially had an 8-hour workday, but when major projects came in, overtime was unavoidable. Even with double pay for the extra hours, Clara still had a huge debt hanging over her head. The irony was palpable. She worked herself to the bone for me all month, only to use the paycheck I signed to pay me back. Leo wasn't faring much better. The Lynn family had banked on Emily marrying me, hoping to climb the social ladder through our connection. Now that I had cast Clara aside, they were stuck with Leo. They vented all their frustration and disappointment on him. With no other family to turn to, Leo would go crying to Clara whenever he was upset. She had to juggle earning money to pay her debts while also managing Leo's fragile emotions. Over time, the stress took its toll, and she began making mistakes at work. The manager, remembering my instructions, found a reason to dock her pay for every error. Clara was furious but helpless, so she kept quiet and endured it. Hearing the manager's report on her situation, I praised his recent performance and told him to keep up the good work. A few weeks later, after visiting a client in the hospital, I ran into Leo in the main lobby. I had no intention of acknowledging him and was heading straight for the exit when he saw me. He rushed over eagerly, calling out, "Bro!" and even tried to sling an arm around my shoulders. I frowned and took a step back as my bodyguard intercepted him. He immediately looked shaken, and tears welled up in his eyes as he gazed at me with a pitiful expression. "Bro, are you still angry about the wedding? My cousin just cares about me a lot, but she loves you the most. After you two argued and you gave her the cold shoulder, she's become so haggard." I internally rolled my eyes. It was broad daylight, and he was spinning such a ridiculous story. Clara was exhausted from working to pay off her debt to me. That much was true. His story was a clever mix of half-truths, just enough to mislead anyone who didn't know the full situation. I looked at him coldly. First, we are not close. Basic manners dictate maintaining a respectful social distance. Secondly, Clara and I have broken up. I am not your bro. I have no interest in hearing about Clara's life, and frankly, I have no desire to see you either. With that, I turned and headed for the door. Leo panicked and took a few steps to follow me. "Bro, you—" He only managed those 2 words before collapsing dramatically onto the floor. I hesitated for a second, taking note of the numerous security cameras and the flow of patients and staff. He wouldn't be able to pin this on me. To be cautious, I had my assistant acquire a copy of the security footage from that time period. Since we were in a hospital, Leo was quickly attended to and taken into an examination room. Seeing that he was fine, I was about to leave when Clara dashed into the room, her face a mask of anxiety. When she saw me, her eyes filled with resentment. "What did you do to Leo?" she demanded. "This has nothing to do with him. Whatever your issue is, take it out on me, but don't you dare hurt Leo." I rolled my eyes again. Does this woman have a persecution complex? The thought of almost marrying her was becoming one of the darker moments of my life. Leo rushed up to me. I ignored him, and then he fainted. How is that my problem? And by the way, it is currently working hours. You left your post without permission, which counts as absenteeism. It seems your workload isn't heavy enough. I'll have a word with the branch manager about giving you more tasks. Considering the money you owe me, you should be working diligently. Just then, the doctor walked in, asking who was with the patient. Clara hurried over to ask about Leo. The doctor's tone was not pleasant. "He is already ill. You family members should be taking proper care of the patient." Clara paused, then simply nodded, taking the report from the doctor. I raised an eyebrow slightly. Leo looked at me again with that same pitiful expression. "Bro, Alex, please don't be mad. It's all my fault. I shouldn't have been so envious of your wedding. If I hadn't, you and my cousin wouldn't have broken up. It's all on me. Please forgive her. You're 27 now. It's going to be hard for you to find someone else." For a split second, I caught a flash of satisfaction and challenge in his eyes. This Leo wasn't nearly as weak as he pretended to be, but I didn't care. He would never have the chance to outsmart me. All he was capable of was sweet-talking Clara. I shot back. "Get your facts straight. I broke up with Clara. Without her, I can find a younger and better partner in a heartbeat. She, on the other hand, is nothing without me. The one who should have regrets is her, not me. If you don't believe me, just ask your dear sister." Clara's face darkened with anger. I had clearly hit a nerve. Sometimes I truly couldn't understand why these two thought I was somehow hung up on her. Just before stepping out the door, I turned back as if I had just remembered something. "Oh, and by the way," I said cheerfully to Leo, "in case you didn't know, your wonderful sister still owes me a considerable amount of money. Make sure you remind her, okay? After all, a person of her excellent character surely wouldn't intentionally default on a loan, right?" I didn't bother with them any further and walked straight out of the hospital room. It was ridiculous. Where on earth did they get this unshakable confidence? Clara ended up with even more work, and paying attention to Leo was pushed to the back burner. Just when I thought the siblings had finally calmed down and wouldn't stir up any more trouble, my assistant walked into my office with a serious expression, handing me a tablet. "Mr. Anderson, there's a lot of negative sentiment about you spreading online." I took the tablet and saw that a popular relationship vlogger had just released a new video. The man in the video had his face blurred and his voice altered, but I recognized him instantly. "When I got married, my cousin paid for everything," the distorted voice of Leo said. "Her boyfriend was unhappy about it and broke up with her, and now he's even demanding she pay him for emotional distress. My cousin is working herself to the bone to pay him back and is visibly worn out. I'm genuinely worried about her. I hope her ex-boyfriend stops giving her the cold shoulder. My cousin loves him dearly. I bumped into him at the hospital recently and tried to show my concern, but he just brushed me off and told me to stay away. Still, I really wish he would get back with my sister and they could live a good life together. I am willing to apologize to him and ask for his forgiveness." I raised an eyebrow. He certainly had a knack for twisting the facts. A quick glance at the comments section showed a torrent of abuse directed at me. People were calling me narrow-minded, petty, and even a gold digger. They all sympathized with Clara. Leo's tactics were laughably low class, trying to use public pressure to force a reconciliation. What a shame for him that I, Alex Anderson, do not bow to threats. I instructed my assistant to gather all relevant evidence, contact our legal team, and file the necessary reports and lawsuits. Who did he think he was, trying to guilt-trip me? I wasn't having any of it. Soon after, even Clara called me. I'm not sure what nonsense Leo had been filling her head with, but she sounded far too confident. "Alex, it's about time you dropped this tantrum. Even my patience has its limits. I am willing to let go of the past, and our wedding can still happen. Your reputation isn't looking very good right now, so you might want to tone down your arrogance. After we're married, you need to take good care of Leo. He's been unwell lately, and as his future brother-in-law, you shouldn't hold grudges." I almost rolled my eyes into the back of my head. These two were truly unbelievable. One thought posting a sob story online could make me cave, and the other assumed that with my reputation supposedly in tatters, she was my only option. I let out a sharp laugh. "Why don't you focus on paying back what you owe me first?" I said, and hung up, blocking her new number in the process. I then released all the evidence on my official social media channels and tagged the relationship blogger. First, there was the video from the bridal boutique, which I had been recording as part of our wedding planning documentary. The footage clearly showed Clara shamelessly trying to pressure me into covering the venue costs for Leo's wedding. It captured my refusal and her subsequent threat to call off our wedding, followed by me turning the tables and breaking it off first. Next, I shared receipts and bank transaction records, proving that the money I was asking for was for gifts given in anticipation of a marriage that she had effectively called off. There was also the security footage of Clara ambushing me at my office and trying to deny the debt when I asked for repayment. The final clip was the security footage from the hospital, showing me telling Leo to leave me alone, him continuing to approach me, and then his sudden collapse when I was a good 4 or 5 meters away, having never touched him. The comment section exploded. The tide of public opinion turned instantly. "These siblings are both dumb and malicious," one comment read, clearly trying to manipulate the situation and play the victim online. Another said, "Lucky for him, he has proof." Plenty of people saw through their nonsense. The support for me was overwhelming. Why shouldn't a guy get his engagement gifts back after a breakup? Especially when she's the one who issued the ultimatum. This guy is a legend. It's rare to see someone handle this kind of emotional blackmail so boldly. The gifts he gave weren't cheap at all. This guy must be loaded. Why would her brother's wedding be his problem? The nerve to demand he surrender his own venue booking. Serves her right for trying to control him and then getting dumped. What a clown. She's way too full of herself. Why does she think she's his only option? Thank goodness for the clear-headed people online who saw through the charade. If not, who knows how much worse the situation could have gotten. The public sentiment didn't just turn against me, as Leo had hoped. Many level-headed commenters targeted him for his dishonesty and shamelessness. The vlogger quickly released a public apology, stating that he had failed to verify the information before posting and was deeply sorry for spreading misinformation. I didn't make it too difficult for him. He had simply taken Leo at his word. I advised him to verify his sources more carefully in the future to avoid being used as a pawn again. He thanked me profusely and promised it wouldn't happen again. Leo also released a video. He sobbed, stating that he only wanted me and Clara to patch things up and didn't realize the impact his video would have. He never actually apologized, merely hoping to gloss over the incident by playing the victim once more. I went ahead and sued him for defamation. People often try to assert their own importance when they feel inadequate, and Clara was a prime example. She seemed to believe I was deliberately targeting and humiliating her and Leo. Somehow, she found out I was out of the office for a site visit and showed up in front of me, radiating a misplaced confidence. "Alex, don't think you can bully us just because you have money," she demanded. "Why are you targeting Leo and me?" Seeing her had become a knee-jerk trigger for me to roll my eyes. "You aren't important enough to be targeted," I told her plainly. "I have dozens of deals to close and no time to waste on you. If I hadn't temporarily lost my mind and gotten involved with you, neither you nor Leo would have ever crossed my path. Don't overestimate your own significance, or you'll quickly find out you're nothing but a joke." She wanted to say more, but my security team politely escorted her away. Riding the wave of public attention from the incident, I announced the formation of a new pro bono legal team within my company, dedicated to settling marriage and relationship disputes. The whole episode had opened my eyes to how often one person ends up on the losing end of a relationship. If someone in my position, with ample resources, could be so easily misunderstood and attacked, I could only imagine what happened to those who were less experienced or less powerful. I wanted to leverage my resources to help others protect their rights. We offered free legal assistance to those who were financially disadvantaged, and over time, we helped countless people who felt trapped and powerless. Leo's wife, Sophie, eventually brought him over to apologize, fearing his foolish actions might harm her family's business ties with my company. Leo apologized through tears, but his eyes still held a flicker of resentment. Looking at the two of them, I laid out my simple terms. He had to post a public video apology, admitting his lies and wrongdoings. Sophie quickly agreed. Yes, that's only right. It was all Leo's fault. Leo, however, was not happy. He had carefully cultivated an image of a lavish lifestyle on his social media account, which had amassed thousands of followers. Forcing him to publicly apologize to me was like a slap in the face. Sophie was polite to me, but sharp with him. She tried hard to persuade him, but he stubbornly refused. "You were wrong in the first place. Now Alex is willing to forgive you, so why are you being so difficult?" Leo's face turned pale. He bit his lower lip and said nothing, his stubbornness on full display. I looked at my assistant, who stepped forward and said politely, "Mr. Anderson's time is precious. Since Mr. Vance does not wish to apologize, perhaps you should both leave." Sophie got desperate. She turned and slapped Leo hard across the face. "Why is apologizing such a big deal? Do you think I need to be nice to you all the time?" A bright red handprint appeared on Leo's cheek. He looked at Sophie in disbelief, and his eyes welled up when he saw her ignoring his pain. He covered his face and said, sniffling, "I'm sorry, Alex. I'll post a video apology." I frowned. I didn't like Leo, but I disliked watching someone hit their partner even more. "Sophie," I said, "now that you have chosen to marry Leo, you should treat him with respect." Sophie apologized repeatedly. "Alex, I am so sorry. I lost my temper. I promise it won't happen again." Before they left, Leo glanced back at me with an unreadable expression. Soon after, he posted the apology video. His face was still marked with the red handprint. Had Sophie hit him again? In the video, his voice was flat. "I apologize to Alex Anderson. I misunderstood the situation. Alex has broken up with my cousin. The money he wants back was for gifts he gave for their wedding, so he wasn't wrong to ask for it back." Even though he apologized, his tone was strange and uncomfortable. I briefly considered talking to Sophie about treating Leo better, but then I decided some people simply aren't worth the sympathy. Business had picked up recently, and I was incredibly busy. Soon, however, an internal audit uncovered that some of our products were defective due to a manufacturing issue. Since it was an internal problem, the investigation was swift. After several rounds of interviews and checks, we zeroed in on Clara. I reported my findings to the police. When they took over the investigation, they discovered much more. It turned out Clara had stolen the plans for our company's new flagship project and was planning to sell them to a competitor. She was caught at her apartment, packing her belongings in a hurry. At first, she denied everything, but faced with the overwhelming evidence against her, she had no choice but to confess. She blamed me, of course, for being heartless and humiliating her publicly, claiming she was just trying to get back at me. I chuckled bitterly. "This is mostly for Leo, isn't it? You two don't have any blood ties. He's your aunt and uncle's adopted son. After they passed away, he came to live with your family, and that's when you became close." I had suspected for a while that there was something off about their relationship. Back when Leo got sick in the hospital, Clara's reaction had been strange. She wasn't just concerned. She seemed surprised, angry, and almost jealous. A sister's attitude toward her sick brother shouldn't be so complicated. I had hired a private investigator to look into them discreetly, and had received pictures of them leaving a hotel together, about an hour apart. They were adults, so going to a hotel together likely wasn't just for a chat. I hadn't acted on the photos right away. After all, Clara was still, in a way, making me money by paying off her debt. As long as she didn't damage my interests, her messy personal life with Leo didn't concern me. Hearing my words, Clara looked deeply upset. Being exposed for such a scandalous affair, especially when Leo was married, would surely lead to public condemnation. She must have cared for him a great deal to risk committing a serious crime to stand up for him. I found it all deeply ironic. "Don't tell me you think Leo's illness is somehow your fault," I mused. Clara looked at me sharply. "Leave him out of this. It was all my doing. It has nothing to do with Leo." I shrugged. "We'll see what the police investigation finds out. I simply respect their process." The police soon interrogated Leo. He was terrified and clearly had not expected to get caught up in this. "Officer, I had no idea she would do something like that," he pleaded. "We were just friends. I don't know anything about what she did, and it has absolutely nothing to do with me." Clara had apparently planned to take all the blame herself. Seeing Leo so quickly distance himself from her, her expression dimmed with a profound sadness. In the end, Clara was sentenced to 5 years in prison for corporate espionage and other economic crimes. Leo disappeared discreetly after the trial, but I certainly wasn't going to let him off so easily. I made sure his wife, Sophie, anonymously received a copy of the photos of him and Clara at the hotel. Sophie, with her fiery temper, tore into Leo relentlessly after that. He begged and pleaded, but she wouldn't budge. Later, Sophie found even more undeniable proof of his betrayals, and in a final fit of fury, she filed for divorce, leaving Leo with nothing. He ended up being taken in by Clara's parents. They had been dead set against Leo and Clara's relationship back in the day, but now that Clara was in prison, they knew finding another partner would be difficult. They didn't particularly like Leo, and his cowardly behavior had deeply hurt them, but they took him in. As usual, I was in my office, listening to my assistant's daily report, when my phone lit up on the table. "Hey, can you leave work early tonight?" It was from a young woman I had recently started seeing. Ever since we got together, she had been incredibly clingy and affectionate. She texted me every day, and if I was slow to respond, she would get all pouty and jealous, accusing me of caring more about work than about her. Of course, I secretly enjoyed spoiling her. In relationships, you have to figure out what kind of person truly suits you through experience. And no matter what happens, you must always learn to love yourself first.